Let's talk about the new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius that occurred at 11:42 p.m. Pacific time yesterday. Some of you may, again, I do this after my new moon videos, cry that this video is too late and it's already happened, and I would suggest that for those who are kind enough to watch this video, do watch the video, and I would ask you to continue to be in a space of reflection for the next 24 to 48 hours. It's kind of nice that this eclipse occurred just before the weekend, and insofar as I would still, eclipses, more and more I feel that the days around the eclipses themselves, and with the new moon solar eclipse, the 48 to 72 hours after an eclipse, I think would be a good time to reflect on where you're at. I'm not suggesting that you need to reflect necessarily on what I'm telling you, although I would ask you to just, since you're taking the time to listen to this video, to take from it what you feel resonates with you. But I certainly would ask you to be in a space of reflection and take stock of where things are going, and most importantly, because this is a South Node eclipse, think about what it is that needs to be released and what it is that needs to be finished up and ended. If I were to describe this new moon solar eclipse in a sentence or two, or something along those lines, I would remind you first that we have talked repeatedly about the last 6 months of 2021, the second half of 2021, very much being about moving to a new set of energies and taking care of a past set of energies and resolving them. But resolving them sometimes means seeing certain things to completion. Sometimes resolution is also knowing what to leave alone, what to detach from, what to release. Release is probably a better word. And nowhere is that clearer now than with this December 3rd new moon solar eclipse. I got a little muddled with dates there for a second. The week before and after December the 3rd, paying attention to what is going on around this time, both last week and this coming week. The week before and after February the 3rd, 2022 would be important dates. And I would hazard to say that by February the 3rd, on February the 4th, Mercury will go direct after having been retrograde for about 3 weeks. I would hazard to say that by February the 3rd, the new life that was announced by the lunar eclipse in Taurus on November the 19th will start to show itself more and more. Will for many people be present, will be here. And so whatever it is that needs to be retired and released, I would say you have a good 2 months in order to do so. But this is why the space of reflection and listening to this video and being on the other side of the eclipse and being open to whatever it is that is brought to you that starts to encourage this release becomes important. If you have a sense of where it is that you need to go, and the week before and after November the 19th, week before and after September the 19th, 2021, but the November 19th lunar eclipse would certainly have heralded, it's a little bit like, the Four of Wands in Tarot. It's like this portal. It's like this is the new direction of the new area that we're going to. Then the Sagittarius solar eclipse, less than 24 hours ago, is a reminder that an old set of energies is winding down. My cat Valentine wants to say hello. He thinks I'm talking to him. He doesn't understand when I'm talking to the screen that I'm talking to you. So we might have some of that. He's letting me know that he's going to sit on his seat, and he is circling around, and he's announcing that he is retiring for the time being, disgusted that he has not been fed, even though it is an hour before feeding time. But, this is when it all begins. He's already tried to get me to feed him, and he knows it's not happening, and he is letting me know that he is just appalled, and he is going to retire for the night, which he's not. And the back is turned towards me, and he's staring at the wall. Okay, so with all that done, the eclipses have changed axis. So they have gone from Gemini Sagittarius, and the Sagittarius eclipse less than 24 hours ago is the last of the Gemini Sagittarius eclipses for this go around, and they're switching to Taurus Scorpio. So this last eclipse of the cycle that is on its way out is another reason to remind you that there's an old set of energies that is waiting to be released. In addition, it's a new moon solar eclipse conjunct the South Node. The South Node is always a point of releasing behaviors and patterns that are so ingrained in us that we lean into them subconsciously. And it's like a whirlpool that keeps sucking us back in. It's an area of strength, but it's not an area of growth. And yes, it's an area of strength, but it's a dead pool, as opposed to the North Node, which is often an area of longing but weakness because we are here to master certain skills. But that's where the desire and the growth and the fulfillment and the life energy is and the joy is. Whereas leaning into South Node behaviors ultimately leads to no results. If anything, it can lead to destruction. So part of what we should be meditating on is, you'll know. It's as simple as just knowing what is not working and what doesn't have flow and what doesn't feel right. And as I've said repeatedly in videos, a lot of this might be tied to, if you just take, I said I would try and summarize this eclipse in a sentence, and I would say, by now I think you know what the new could possibly look like and where it is that you're being beckoned. And so the question becomes, what if the old needs to be retired? And sometimes it can be a little scary because the new may not be here yet. It may not have completely manifested yet to give us permission to let go of the old. And depending on who you are, you will tackle this on your own with regard to whether you feel like you need the universe to kick you out the door and make the stuff manifest, and therefore you kind of take care of what needs to be released then and lean into what needs to be released then, or whether you choose to do this a little bit intuitively based on how you're reading the energy of what feels like it has life and what's trying to make itself present and what feels like it's on its way out. Okay, so a lot of this depends on your comfort with your own kind of compass and intuitive guidance system and the way the energy of things is working out. The other thing I'm going to say is, after this eclipse, the next important date, of course, is the fact that we're going to have a Gemini full moon on December the 18th. The reason why the Gemini full moon is important is that the last solar eclipse before the one yesterday we had was in the sign of Gemini. And typically a solar eclipse would have a lunar eclipse bookending that sort of 6-month period. Well, we had the lunar eclipse in Taurus, which certainly provided an arc, but I would extend that arc to the full moon in Gemini so that we can give the new moon solar eclipse in Gemini around June the 20th its due, and imagine that some of those older energies at this point in time are going to try to, by December the 18th, that's going to be the period, the dot, the full stop, whatever you want to call it, for that eclipse energy that started about 6 months ago. The day after the full moon in Gemini, Venus goes retrograde, only to go direct at the end of January. And in the middle of January, Mercury goes retrograde, only to go direct on February the 4th. February the 3rd, I think, is an important date because it's 2 months after the solar eclipse, week before, week after February the 3rd. So I would like you to think about this time period from December the 19th to February the 3rd, 4th as a birth canal. So if the November 19th lunar eclipse and September 19th, 2021 would also be an important date, the week before, week after November 19th, announced or started to build energy in a certain direction, a new direction, then this time period between December the 19th with Venus going retrograde and going direct beginning of January, but then Mercury going retrograde in the middle of January, going direct on February the 4th, that period between December the 19th and February the 4th acts as sort of a birth canal that pushes us into whatever this new set of energies is. And so yesterday's solar eclipse and the February 4th date ask us to meditate on and to act on, and some of this will be dependent on how proactive you want to be with the energy and where it is that you want the eclipse to come and eclipse something from you. Now, when you ask the eclipse to act on its own behalf, the changes can sometimes be jarring. But I understand that sometimes we want to know if our intuitive sense of what is ending actually ends. So just be patient with yourself and kind to yourself. If the way an ending, if you feel like, oh, I knew this was going to happen, why didn't I do something about it? But if you're waiting because the new isn't here yet and it's kind of difficult to release the old, and the old somehow forces its way out of your life, then just be kind to yourself and know that your guidance system was right all along, and there's a lesson in there perhaps, but you let what needed to evaporate, what needed to be released so that you can move forward in the direction that you need to. Prepare with Venus going retrograde for a period perhaps of financial and relationship reevaluation, maybe even some financial tightness. So just see how it all proceeds. Now, this new moon solar eclipse is a solar eclipse, but it's also a new moon. So wherever Sagittarius sits in your chart, whatever house it occupies, whatever that house stands for, it's perfectly reasonable to believe that it will come with its own new moon energy as well. With eclipses, because eclipses can be full moons and new moons, the actual impact of a full moon or a new moon can be, during the time of the new moon and the full moon, can be a little bit dimmed because either the sun or the moon is eclipsed. But at the same time, wherever Sagittarius sits in your chart and the house it occupies and what that stands for may still experience a new moon, 4-week period highlighting something new, something unmistakable, subtle, unmistakable, coming in to the part of the chart where Sagittarius is, so you can have sort of a normal new moon experience too, even if it's a little bit muted and a little bit cloudy. So within 48 to 72 hours, maybe the next week, maybe the next 2 weeks, you might see some activity and action there. And it could be that that activity and action, even though it's coming in, is what prompts this release of the old as well and allows you to release whatever needs to be released. Now, again, wherever Sagittarius sits in your chart and what house it occupies and what that house stands for could give you clues about what needs to be released. But if that confuses you, you can throw all that out of the window, and all I want you to do over the next 24 to 48 hours, if you have the time, and we'll come to that in a second, is to sit down and make a list of where you think you're going, where you think things are going, where you think the life and the growth is, where you think the adventure is, where you think the flow is, and where you think the flow is not. Because when you put your energy in a certain direction, you're going to feel that flow, I think. And when you put your energy in another direction, you're going to be like, I'm not so sure. I think some change needs to be made. So whether you release something immediately or you prepare to do so over a period of time, at least have that inventory ready with regard to what it is that needs to go. Some of what needs to go is going to be related to the Saturn-Uranus square, which is going to happen for the third and final time this year on December the 24th. This new moon solar eclipse encodes 3 transits. 1, the new moon solar eclipse is conjunct Mercury. Number 2, Mars squares Jupiter shortly after the eclipse new moon, and then Saturn squares Uranus on December the 24th. Let's talk about the Saturn-Uranus square first. I have done videos on this. You can look at my video list and you'll see it. It sort of, I think in the first half of this year is when I did some of those videos. Bottom line is a friendly reminder that Uranus and Taurus, wherever Taurus sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, is seeking authenticity and liberation for you, and to align you with what is going to, what reflects your truest essence, your authenticity, your sense of liberation. It's freeing you. Developments there might be highly unusual, might be highly individual, might feel really authentic, might come across as somewhat rebellious or unusual, quirky, idiosyncratic, individual. But in order for that to happen, you've got to heed Saturn's lessons in Aquarius. Where does Aquarius sit in your chart? What house does it occupy? What does that house stand for? Again, releasing the old, not falling into patterns and behaviors that have become ingrained for the past 28 years into becoming what I call the path of least resistance, especially related to wherever Aquarius sits in your chart and what house that occupies. So if there are lessons there, and if there are behaviors that need to be changed, and if there are boundaries that need to be drawn, and if there is a certain amount of discipline, and I would equate discipline with self-love, of the tough love kind, because we're talking about Saturn, but it's one of those things where if you want to lose weight, and I'm using lose weight as a metaphor, if you want to become healthy, and I'm using becoming healthy for the metaphor, there are no shortcuts to Saturn. This is not the taking a pill. This is not the cutting out everything and eating lean protein so that you can remove water weight. That might be a part of a bigger plan. There are no shortcuts here. With Saturn, it is a self-love, discipline, and yes, it'll feel like, but it's about lasting results and lasting change with regard to respecting your own potential and caring for yourself. And it's not going to feel like, and dealing with our demons, dealing with our self-sabotaging behaviors. So where does Aquarius sit in your chart? What house does it occupy? What does that house stand for? Look for those behaviors. Look at where Saturn has been knocking. It might feel a little bit like it's been slapping you across the face over and over again, or telling or giving you a D or an F or a C on whatever it is that's been going on in that part of the chart, so that you can get with the program and turn that into a B, B+, A-, A+. And that requires you to do some real hard work that is full of discipline and moving away from self-sabotaging behaviors, and in that part of especially as they affect that part of the chart, and building a strong foundation for a healthy future. And somewhere that work actually allows that liberation in the Taurus side of the chart to continue. Similarly, because Mars is squaring Jupiter in Aquarius, wherever Scorpio sits in your chart, Mars is transiting Scorpio. Wherever Scorpio sits in your chart, what house it occupies and what that house stands for, some action needs to be taken, either pursuing goals in that part of the chart, or defending boundaries, or embracing conflict. And doing that will allow you to have this new beginning that Jupiter's trying to create in Aquarius, and therefore the part of the chart where Aquarius sits and what house it occupies. Okay, so both Jupiter and Uranus, wonderful planets, Jupiter trying to end a 12-year cycle, start a 12-year cycle, 12, 13-year cycle, wherever Aquarius sits, and create an auspicious new beginning and end a cycle, and Uranus trying to move you towards your own path, are dependent on Mars in Scorpio taking action to either pursue goals or defend your boundaries, and Saturn in Aquarius acting in ways that are going to feel challenging because they're new, but they're necessary rewiring of patterns that are actually respectful of yourself and your potential. And that is what's going to unlock Jupiter and Uranus to do whatever needs to be done. Now, the new moon is also conjunct Mercury. It would not surprise me if last week and this week, and I would say till the end of this coming week, it feels a little bit like Mercury's retrograde. Delays, technology, the printer runs out of ink, the network isn't working, it takes forever to get an answer on something, phone calls, customer service, bizarre Mercury retrogradeness. It's because Mercury is very close to the sun. It is blinded by the light of the sun. It is eclipsed by the light of the sun also, perhaps is one way to put it. It is combust. And so Mercury cannot exercise his power. And as the week progresses and as he moves further from the sun, so much the better. However, the new moon and the solar eclipse, as they rule along, the new moon over the next 48 hours, 72 hours, a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and the solar eclipse over the course of the next 2 months and even the next 6 months, whatever it is that needs to be, whatever it is that is brought in to the Sagittarius part of the chart through the new moon, and whatever it is that needs to be released in the Sagittarius part as a result of the solar eclipse may have a strong communication element. Emails, letters, contracts, talking, speaking, mental processing, transactions. We can't ignore the conjunction with Mercury. Even though Mercury in the short term is combust in meeting up with the sun in Sagittarius a few days before this new moon, you know, when a planet is combust and it conjuncts the sun, it kind of burns off a kind of past imprint and karma and imbues a new sense of mission with that conjunction from the sun and moves forward. So as I said, from a new moon perspective, either things that come to you are going to come on Mercury's wings, or else whatever it is that you're going to release from a new moon, from a solar eclipse perspective, you're going to release on Mercury's wings. So communication, transactions, commuting, cars, vehicles, travel, writing, skill acquisition, communication may play a big role in however it is that you're going to be taking stuff on and releasing stuff. Sagittarius, new moon in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's in Aquarius, ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Aquarius, and Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus, ruled by Venus. Venus is in Capricorn, Saturn. So somewhere between Saturn, Venus, and Uranus is where the disposition of this chart is. So the Saturn-Uranus square is important, and Venus is getting ready to go retrograde in Capricorn and start this birth canal, where in order to move into this new reality, which has been announcing itself for a few weeks now, with this November 19th eclipse especially, heading to it September 19th to November 19th, whatever this new energy is needs us to go through this Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde so that we can come through on the other side. The Venus goes retrograde in Capricorn, Mercury goes retrograde in Aquarius, briefly into Capricorn, and then direct. So make a list of what you think needs to be released. Make a list of where it is you think you're going. Where it is you think you're going to be. You might think you're going to be there tomorrow. I think you're going to be there in February. I think the new reality will be here with us February, March. And then get prepared to enter this birth canal that we're going to be entering, where this release and leaning into pattern, leaning into the Taurus eclipse, releasing the Sagittarius eclipse, and going through a reevaluation of our finances, of our relationships, of artistic concerns, luxurious concerns, Venusian concerns, and also rethinking and letting our mind catch up with all the new developments is going to then put us into February, March, where the new will be here. This eclipse harkens back in feeling to the eclipse on December the 4th, 2002. So the lunar eclipse on November 19th and December 3rd eclipse harken back to 2002 around this time. So it's a similar feeling of whatever might have been pregnant then. Not born, but pregnant at that time. Okay? I will leave it at this. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Thank you for your patience. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will be back soon. Thanks.